Greetings, everybody. I want to take a few minutes to talk about how competition affects the economy. I want to show you how it works and why it is important to have competition in the economy. And if you stick with me till the end of this video, I'll apply this concept to both school choice and single payer healthcare systems. So when you first hear about this in the standard econ course, you talk about the differences between competition and monopoly. And monopoly bad, competition good. Why monopoly bad? Restrict output. Why competition good? Maximizes social welfare. Prices are lower. And one thing that they mention but don't really talk about is you get improved quality. And that's going to be the main focus of this little talk, that competition improves quality. Not only that, it is necessary to have competition to get this improved quality in any type of good or service. And I just want to start with a quick example of something I've seen over the last couple years here in Tucson, Arizona. And it has to do with Starbucks coffee. Tucson, like virtually every other city, there seems to be a Starbucks on every corner. And they seem to be very profitable, or there won't be so many. Now, I've been at a Starbucks like twice in my life. I've actually made it through 68 years of life and have never drank a cup of coffee. I've tasted it, said, I don't like this, never had it again. But Starbucks, so popular, so well run, just a good company. Who would ever come up with the idea to compete against Starbucks? I guess it just shows that I don't have any entrepreneurial ability, because if I was thinking about starting a business, I would not think about going into competition with Starbucks. Well, somebody did. Somebody looked at Starbucks, understood customers, and decided to compete with them here in Tucson. And what I hear, it's happened in other places. Dutch Brothers Coffee. Once again, never been to Dutch Brothers. All I know is that when Dutch Brothers opened up a place half a mile from my house, they had to block off a lane just to handle the traffic going to it. And from what I could see, the big difference between Dutch Brothers and Starbucks is more of a place you go into, sit down, have a coffee. Some of them do have drive-throughs, but it almost seems to be more of an in-house place. Well, Dutch Brothers kind of understood most customers want drive-through. And if you look at a place like McDonald's, like 70% of their customers are drive-through. And whoever started Dutch Brothers said, people don't want to have to go inside to get a cup of coffee. They just want to be able to drive up and get one. So they built a Dutch Brothers coffee. Place is packed. Even today, years later, it seems like every time I go by that place, whether Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter what time of the day, there's always 4 or 5 cars in line to get a cup of coffee. Boy, did they do a good job taking business from Starbucks. And then how did Starbucks respond to this? Now, Starbucks, hey, we're doing great. We're the number one coffee chain in the country. We must have the formula down. All of a sudden, they saw their sales drop here in town. And I know of at least 4 Starbucks that moved, maybe 100 yards from their original location. They'd be in a strip mall, and then they would just get a pad out in the parking lot, build a brand new Starbucks with a drive-through. So in the end, what happened? Starbucks, to keep their customers, had to improve the quality of their business. If not, they had been in trouble. So it was that competition from Dutch brothers that led to the improvement at Starbucks, a better customer experience. Without that competition, Starbucks would have kept doing what Starbucks did. And I used to use this example when I was teaching in my classes for micro and talking about competitive markets. Assume you open up a pizza shop and you're the only pizza shop in town. You think you're making good pizzas. You're busting your tail. You're working hard. You have great employees. Your prices aren't too bad, and you have customers. But do you really know how good the pizza is that you're making? Because unless you have it something to compare it with, you can think it's good. You say, well, I have customers. Well, sometimes you're going to have customers because they want pizza. And they may think your pizza isn't great, but you're the only pizza shop in town and they feel like pizza. But then another pizza shop opens. If they make better pizza than you, your pizza shop's going to have to improve. So once again, competition results in increases in quality. Whereas I think I could get most people to agree competition is better than monopoly. I see a lot of people actually making exceptions to that, that we want to have monopoly instead of competition, somehow thinking that would be better. And first thing I want to talk about is public education. Now, once again, I'm not ripping anybody who's a teacher, administrator. I'm just going with the assumption they're hardworking, skilled, well educated, they're doing their best, they're busting their butts, and they all think they're doing a good job. When I first came to Tucson, I had a job, full time teaching gig at a college here. And before the semester started, we had a business department meeting. And I knew the topic of it was going to be, oh, we need to work on course outcomes. To keep our accreditation, we have to have some way of measuring course outcomes. Boy, did I walk into that meeting prepared, because as department chair, Department of Economics and Business at Sweetbriar College in Virginia. So I knew how to do course evaluations. And the way I did it, I had there's this company that makes a test. You give the students a pre-test, a post-test, check their scores pre-test, check scores post-test, see how much they improved, and then compare that to national averages. Oh, my students were in the 90th percentile of what they learned in an economics course. So you had this outside way of measuring course outcomes. Well, I get to that meeting and I'm all ready to do my spiel about this. And then I'm told, I'm sorry, the administration will not allow us to use outside measurements to do course outcomes. And what they came up with, okay, during the course, we're going to ask the students some questions. And then, like on a test, multiple choice questions. And then we're going to see how many got them right and wrong. And we are going to judge the course outcomes by, well, we think if 50% of the students get the question right, we've done a really good job. Because part of the process was if the students showed they didn't meet this specific course outcome, you were supposed to come up with a way to redesign the course, to teach this better. But you ended up with the faculty deciding on what questions to use, grading those questions, and then setting the standards of whether the course outcome was achieved. And I'm sitting there like, you all went to graduate school, right? And you probably took a statistics course. It is, to me, it was like, wow, this is a colossal waste of time. But if it makes the accreditation people happy, fine. But don't tell me you're actually measuring course outcomes. Now let's look at school choice. Again, teachers, hardworking, dedicated, educated. But the administration, say you have 15 elementary schools in your district, all the teachers are using the same books, they're teaching the same things, and they're teaching them the same way. And then they say, we're doing a good job. How are you measuring this? How do you know you're doing a good job? Because if you have no other schools around that students go to, what are you comparing yourself to? It's the same way back the college situation I was just talking about. When we set the levels, we judged it, we patted ourselves on the back because what a good job we were doing. Now, firms do not necessarily like competition because I got the only pizza shop in town. I can just sit back and relax. That competition comes in, it keeps me on my toes. Check every teacher union's views on school choice, where instead of having to send your child to the public school in that neighborhood, you can take the money the state was giving the school district and use that at any school you want. Now you introduce competition. The unions hate this because I hate to be cynical here, but they know the competition may make them look bad. And unless they find some way to improve, they could be out of jobs. So they fight it tooth and nail. But let other schools open. Maybe they'll have some sort of innovations in teaching style. Maybe more students will read and have math skills at the proper levels for their grades rather than you can look up statistics on how American students in public schools do in math and reading comprehension. It is not good numbers. Now, if all of a sudden parents start pulling their children out of the public schools and send them to charter schools, private schools, because the outcomes are better, that is going to force the public schools to get better. But not only teachers' unions, but there's a lot of people who are against school choice. And these are the same people who say competition is good, monopolies are bad, but let's have monopolies in schools. It doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing you hear a lot of people say they want is a single payer healthcare system, national healthcare, basically. And once again, the people working in this industry, hardworking, dedicated, doing their jobs. But if you have one payer, how do you know you're doing well? If you have no competition, there's no other healthcare companies. Well, what happens is all you gotta do is look at with Medicare and Medicaid. There's an estimate of the amount of fraud, errors, and abuse that happen with Medicare, totaling about $60 billion a year. That is wasted through false payments, fraud, whatever. And then look at Medicaid. They say their improper payment rate is 5.09%. Oh, that doesn't sound too bad. But that totals $31.1 billion in federal money that's being wasted. Now, can you imagine private health companies allowing that level of fraud? Now, I'm not saying that the government healthcare system doesn't care about fraud, but it seems obvious that they don't know how to handle it. So if you have all this competition, people will make other choices for their healthcare, and it will force the government healthcare. But you go to that single payer system, quality is going to suffer. And as I said, all that fraud just would not happen under competition. So I hope you found it interesting. And I will end one bit of trivia. that I do know of one occupation where you don't need outside competition to let you know whether you're doing a good job. And this comes from what is called EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. They have an expression: total success or utter failure. If the bomb blows up, you did a bad job. If you disarmed it safely, you did a good job. You don't need any competition in this one. So, hope you enjoyed it and have yourself a blessed day.